Most beginner facilitators make this one mistake that can really ruin their workshops before they even start. And this is a mistake that we've also made in the past, but over the years, we really perfected our process to the point where it's no longer a problem anymore. And in this video, you can learn how to avoid that mistake as well. Hi, my name is Amr, and I'm a senior facilitator at AJ&Smart. I've been facilitating workshops for about 8 years, and I've also trained hundreds of people on how to facilitate. And during my early years, I made a ton of mistakes when preparing for a workshop and onboarding participants that really made my life so much harder than it needed to be. And again, when I say onboarding, it just means preparing people before a workshop. That means giving them all the information they need, the time, location, etc., and setting expectations. What happens when you don't do this is that people might show up with the wrong expectations, they might cause trouble during the workshop, or they might not show up at all. And like I said, we've had to learn all of this the hard way. So onboarding participants is one of those activities that doesn't actually take a lot of time, but it's gonna make things so much easier both for you and your participants. And there are 4 things that you're gonna wanna do before a workshop. So first up is securing people's time as soon as possible. That means as soon as you have a confirmed date and time for the workshop, you should immediately send out calendar invitations to everybody so that they block their time. So I know this might sound obvious, like of course you're gonna send out calendar invitations to everybody joining the workshop, but this actually happened to us multiple times. So when we were working with a client one time, we had assumed that they were gonna tell everybody from their side when the workshop was happening. And then by the time we had sent out the calendars, we were surprised to know that one of the key participants was actually not gonna be able to join because they had already committed to another important meeting internally and they couldn't really get out of it last minute. And so we really had to change things last minute and try to accommodate their schedule, and created a whole bunch of headaches for us. So make sure to send out the calendar invitations yourself as soon as possible, and don't just rely on somebody else doing it or assume just because of verbal confirmation that people will block their time for the workshop. And since these calendar invitations might be the first thing that participants are seeing from you about this workshop, you'll want to provide some context within the calendar invitation itself about what the workshop is about, why is it happening, why do they need to be there, and you also let them know that more information will come soon. So here's a simple example of what that calendar invitation description might look like, where you would just say, like, for example, hey, we're organizing a session to discuss our next quarterly strategy, and we really need you all to be a part of it. And then you could spell out why are we running it, and you'd have just kind of one sentence here. So we're at a point in time, we need to make an immediate decision to kind of align on one path forward. You say, what is the goal of the session? And you specify what you're gonna have by the end of it. So you could say, like, we're gonna come out with our quarterly strategy by the end of it. And then you say where it's gonna take place. So whether it's at a location or happening remotely. This just gives people enough information to start so that you're able to get out these calendar invitations as soon as possible, but then you can follow it up with more information via email later. So a simple calendar description like this just gives people enough context to know what the workshop is about in order to actually accept the invite, knowing that more information will come soon. So that was the first thing. The second thing is gonna be creating a short questionnaire and sending it out to everybody joining the workshop. At AJ&Smart, we always send out a questionnaire whenever we're working with a client. And we always learn a ton from these questionnaires because they really help us understand the challenge at a deeper level, but they also help us spot sometimes points of misalignment within the client team. So sometimes not everyone on the client side really understands the challenge in the same way, or sometimes they don't even agree on what the top challenge is. And knowing this ahead of time really helps us plan better for our sessions. So sometimes we might give a little more time to a topic where we know people might not agree on that, and we might decide to give it a few extra minutes during the workshop. And this is a step that you can kind of skip for smaller workshops or, like a quick thing that you're running with your team. But if you're doing an important workshop or a workshop for a client, then you'll definitely want to send out this questionnaire because it really helps to understand the challenge more deeply. So this questionnaire doesn't need to be long or complicated. In fact, it's probably better to keep it as short as possible. That way you have a better chance of getting answers from everybody. And we typically only ask a handful of questions. So we basically ask people, from your perspective, what are the most significant challenges regarding the topic that we're going to be discussing in the session? What are the biggest opportunities that we have? And what would be an ideal outcome for the session for you personally? That way we understand kind of personal motivations of everybody joining. And we ask if there are any ideas or concerns that each person has ahead of the session. And finally, we ask if there's any material like a report or something work in progress that should be shared with the group in advance to give everybody more context about the challenge. Okay, so number 3 is giving people all the information that they need about the workshop in a single email. So after you sent out the calendar invitations and you created your questionnaire, you'll want to send out an email just a few days ahead of the workshop with all of the information about the workshop. That way the information about the workshop is top of mind and everybody is prepared to join the workshop. So what should you have in this email? So first, you'll want to tell people what the whole workshop is about, right? So what is the goal? Why is it happening? Why is it important to do it right now? And why do they need to join? Second, it should include the date and time. So even though people already have this in the calendar invitation, it's good to repeat these just to have everything in one place in that email. Third, just include a basic agenda. It doesn't need to be detailed, but a lot of people just like to know what they're signing up for. Fourth is including a link to the questionnaire. So in the previous step, we talked about creating the questionnaire, but we didn't talk about how you're going to share it. And this is the place to share it. So you just include a couple of lines telling people it's important for them to answer a few questions and that it only takes a couple of minutes. The fifth thing is something that you would only do if you were running a remote workshop, and that is to include a link to a check-in board plus a short tutorial video of the tool that you're going to be using, like Miro or Mural or something similar. And we'll talk more about all of that in the next point. So that's basically everything that you need to include in this email. And again, you'll want to send it out at least a few days ahead of the workshop just to have it top of mind and give people enough time to answer the questionnaire. Number 4 is creating that check-in board that I mentioned earlier. And again, this is only relevant for remote workshops, but the idea here is to give people who might not be familiar with the tool that you're going to be using for the remote workshop kind of a safe sandbox for them to play around with the tool and learn it in their own time ahead of the workshop. And you could prepare kind of almost like a warm-up exercise. It doesn't really matter what you put into it. You could ask them a question, so long as they have a little bit of time ahead of the workshop to really experiment with the tool. Because if you skip that step and just kind of introduce Miro or Mural or a similar tool in your session, people are gonna be annoyed because nobody likes surprises and having to change the way that they do things on the spot, especially if it involves learning something new, which people might be uncomfortable with. And it's very important to keep in mind that a tool like Miro or Mural might be easy for you, but it can actually be quite intimidating for other people. And we've seen this many times in the past. And sending a link to a check-in board ahead of time also helps you accomplish another thing, which is check whether everybody is able to access that board. Sometimes people have like weird firewall settings or like IT restrictions. And the last thing you want is to find out during the session that one of your participants cannot access the board for any reason, and you end up wasting like 15 or 20 minutes trying to troubleshoot that during the session. So if you send that link ahead of time, not only do they get to play around with the tool and experiment with it, but they can also let you know like, hey, I can't actually open this link, or it doesn't work for me, anything like that. And you can do all of that troubleshooting ahead of the session and make sure that the session is protected. And the moment that everybody shows up, you can immediately get started with your session. So this is a simple example of a check-in board. This is actually the same check-in board that we sent to all of our clients ahead of our workshops together. And we just include some basic instructions for using either Miro or Mural. And we ask each person to put in their name and what they hope to get the most out of the session. So that's pretty much it. It would only take a person a couple of minutes to go through this check-in board, and it would allow us to know whether they're able to access the board without any issues or if they have any questions about using the tool. It's also good to share with people a very short tutorial video that goes over the basics of using a tool like Miro or Mural or FigJam, because it can be very helpful to people who haven't used a similar tool in the past. And that's pretty much it. That's everything you need to know about how to onboard participants in a way that makes your life and their lives much easier. So give it a try, let us know how it goes, and make sure to download all of the resources to start using them today. And also let us know if there are any lessons that you've learned in your facilitation, and put those down in the comments below and help others learn from your experience. And by the way, if you're interested in facilitation, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We put out videos like this all the time. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.